Hello and welcome everyone to the second season of Satisfying Software. In the first episode, I have with me Susanne Kaiser. She is an independent consultant and author of the book Architecture for Flow. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to it.
Me too. It's nice to have you. So, to start off, I have a question for you. So why do you think it is people struggle so much with creating a software architecture that actually aligns with the business needs?
Great question. I guess that is a multifaceted answer. So I guess it addresses different perspectives. So one thing is that I guess specifically when we develop solutions, one tendency we have is that we jump right into the solution space without understanding really the problem space. And the problem space is about aligning our solutions to the business and the user needs and creating value to the user needs and fulfilling the user needs effectively and efficiently. Not only being able to generate value for our customers, but also being able to deliver that value to our customers. And another aspect is that we, in order to deliver changes quickly or to enable a fast flow of change, we need to have a mostly holistic perspective, not only from the business strategy perspective, but also for software design and software architecture, but also from the team organization perspective. And each of them influence like our architecture that we decide on. So in order to be able to be amenable to change that allows us to respond early and quickly to new and changing circumstances, we have to architect for change, and we have to consider that we have to, like one of the quotes that I bring in from Continuous Architecture and Practice, we have to architect for change and leverage the power of small. So we have to align our architecture to be able to adapt to new and changing circumstances. So that means that we also have to reflect not only decompose, or for example, our big ball of mud into modular components, but also align them to team structure and team interaction modes as well. So, and then also, where do we want to move in a business strategy point of view? Like, what parts of our software solution do we want to build in house? Where do we want to use off-the-shelf products or outsource to utility suppliers? So, and they all are kind of like impacting each other. And I guess that, so, and also like reflecting, for example, Conway's law that mirrors the communication structure in our organization, then mirrors also our software or system design underneath. So they all influence each other. So it is not really like just go with it. We also have to align every perspective in order to fulfill then the business needs in the end.
I think we use very different tools. We use similar tools, but also different tools to sort of investigate that.
Yeah.
So I think my favorite tool to understand a bit the higher, the holistic, like I use the business model canvas quite a lot there. And I think that you actually use Wardley Mapping mostly to get that information.
Yeah.
Why do you like Wardley Mapping so much?
Why I use it, I favor this tool, but it does not. First of all, it's not mutually exclusive to the others, right? So feel free to use those tools that you're familiar with or that you like to approach. But I personally like to use Wardley Mapping because it starts from the user need perspective. So they are the anchor of your map. And just the Wardley map is just one part of Wardley Mapping, right? We have the whole strategy cycle where we visualize the landscape with a Wardley map that is composed of a value chain and evolution stages. And at the anchor of the map is represented by users and their user needs. And that's the reason, that's one of the reasons, in order to build the right thing to create value for our customers, we need to align our solutions to the user needs, fulfilling the user needs directly or indirectly. And I like to use the Wardley map because it also complements very well with Jobs to be Done theory, where Clayton Christensen, the creator of the Jobs to be Done theory, stated that people buy products or services in order to get a job done. And we can start with a core functional job and then identify the desired outcomes as user needs that help to achieve or that help that the users want to achieve in order to get the job done. And it recalibrates our view, because when I remember when I started my career in software engineering decades ago, to be honest, I was thinking, oh, let's use the tiniest, the shiniest technology back then without having anchored it to any user needs. Like maybe back then it was Kubernetes cluster microservices, and not like requesting, okay, what business and user needs we try to fulfill with those. So that was a second thought. And with the Wardley map, the entry point is then the users and the user needs. And it also helps to create a common understanding of the business landscape we operate in. And for example, we can address questions such as, are we custom building components that are not belonging to our core domain, providing competitive advantage? For example, are we custom building commodities and which could be outsourced, or where we can use off-the-shelf products, or maybe cloud-hosted services, something like that, if it's more reflected to subdomains that are not providing competitive advantage, for example, for supporting our generic subdomain related bounded context when we talk about domain-driven design. So, and also to this visualization power, you have your deep personalize yourself, you detach yourself, you just bring it together. You have this shared understanding of the business landscape within a group. So, and also challenge our own assumptions, and also depending on where, in what context you are mapping, sometimes you can overlap different Wardley maps and then see, oh, all of them are using the same CRM system. Can we just achieve some synergies, or maybe why you are custom building that, but isn't that not belonging? So you can ask a lot of questions around it in order to challenge your own assumptions, but also where you can envision then also your future landscape you want to move to.
Yeah, that's nice. I think like I use a combination of a business model canvas, because I noticed that many teams I work with in software, like if you ask them about the company and how do you make money and what's the value that you're trying to offer to your customers, again, the user needs, like they blank on that, like they can't really say that we're here for the technology, for the programming, for the fun stuff.
But somehow you have to make money, right? You have to know
Yes.
your business, right? You have to understand what problem you want to solve and what are your customers and their user needs in order to create a better solution. It's really, yeah.
Yeah, and in the end, like we're doing this to, as you said, get the job done or help people get something done easier or automatic, so that they can focus on other things. Like that's the main purpose of software in the end, to help people.
Absolutely.
And nobody ever mentioned that in any of my courses at uni. I had to figure that one out on my own.
Yeah. Same applies to me. Like, so also to over-engineer solutions with options that the user will never use. Like, why did we implement it? Because we did not started with user research or something like that, or maybe service design blueprints or something like that comes from the user perspective first. And then when we understood it or had at least a glimpse of what the problem space or what the users want to achieve, we can then think about solutions. But usually the problem space remains the same, right? The users and the user needs remains the same. They don't care. The users usually don't care how we are going to solve it in the solution space. They don't care if we use the shiniest AI technology, as long as we fulfill their user needs efficiently and effectively. That's my assumption.
Yeah, that's no, I think that's true. I agree there with it. So how do you get if you go to a company, like all these things are unknown to people most of the time. So how do you get the user needs? Do you brainstorm, or do you use some other techniques for that, or?
No, we are doing collaboratively workshop sessions, so where we combine people from product, from software engineering, from design. Also, this I guess it's the same um, round of people that are involved in event storming sessions as well. So, and maybe some of them that knows the market as well. But to start with them, so and usually it's kind of revealing for them because at the beginning, oh, we only have one user type. And then during the conversation, no, you don't. You have, in fact, a lot of other user types are involved. And that is something, yeah, we take it as the first assumption. So when we challenge that, and then it turns out, oh, yeah. So with having the swarm intelligence from everyone involved in the discussion, so in the collaborative workshop sessions, helps us to collect all the user needs. And usually is trying to there are some heuristics you can apply, or some practices you can apply. For example, you can identify user needs following a user journey in case there is a user journey that you can address, or maybe some task that you want to fulfill. And so it is really trying to identify what could be the user needs that are not. So they're absolutely technology agnostic. So, but and they are expressed in in the language that the users usually then also understand. So it is not like a safe item in database. It's not a user need, for example. The same goes with event storming session, where you have technology agnostic domain events expressed in the language in the ubiquitous language. So that is something addressing there as well. So to identify what is necessary, for example, you can start with a core functional job. So I'll always bring an online school example for junior students as an example, and one of the users could be the teachers. And the teacher, they have the core functional job to facilitate remote learning and to have this as a starting point to start the conversation. So, and what are the desired outcomes as user needs that the teachers want to achieve? They want to prepare learning material. So that could be one user need. They want to assess the student understanding, for example, with assignment. That could be a next user need, or track the student progress, communicate with the student, and so forth. So that is to give can use an underlying user journey, or maybe a task where it's not really connected to each other, but maybe task oriented. So that is how I usually try to identify user needs.
Yeah, I use event storming mostly in my thing. I did a user journey mapping once because I felt like that was going to work better than event storming due to some perceptions around domain-driven design. And event storming sort of lives within the domain-driven design space, so I picked a tool deliberately outside of that space to help them. And I don't know if I did it right because I read the book and then I tried it out, but I do have event storming skills enough. I think I managed to do user mapping then, and I thought it was very, very interesting. What I never did was then transform it to a Wardley map and see now, okay, what do we have in-house in the software? Where does this actually live? I mostly go to strategic classification to see what is core, what is supporting, what is generic. Or I sort of design the ideal situation with my design heuristics and bounded context from the event storm or something like that. But I think you also use Wardley mapping in a way to discover all of that.
Yeah, so it is. So since you brought up event storming, so usually what I do is to I start. One of the starting points could be your current teams and the current team setup and their blockers to flow, like starting from the teams of today, like assessing your current status quo, but also to then to assess. To visualize your current business landscape you operate and compete in. And then I use, then I'm also blending into our ideal futures, like where we want to go. And then I combine a Wardley map, or like I start the conversation, then I go into event storming sessions, for example, and then I ask questions. What is happening in the domain when a teacher wants to prepare a learning material? And then I go into event storming sessions. And so that is the connector there as a starter, conversation starter to start event storming sessions. And then with event storming, I try to identify potential candidates for bounded context that goes then into the solution space of a Wardley map. So I try to blend this then as components, bound context as components of our solution space on our envisioned, like our future landscape we want to operate in. And also, as you said, like with the subdomain types, categorizing then maybe the user needs itself. So which of those user needs belong to core when we fulfill it? So does it provide competitive advantage, or is it more supporting subdomain related user needs, and then also generic subdomain related user needs, and then map them to what bounded context fulfill those user needs, and then also classify those. So maybe we have core domain related bounded contexts, and then we have supporting subdomain related bounded contexts, or generic subdomain related bounded contexts. Then also bring this together, layer after layer on a Wardley map, and then starting the next discussion. What of those bounded contexts we want to build in-house. So in a usual use case, I would say that you focus your development efforts on the core domain-related bounded context, building them in-house. So that is then, for example, could be a candidate of bounded context being placed on custom build evolution stage, or then the generic subdomain-related bounded context. They are non-differentiating, non-specialized. You can then think of using off-the-shelf products or cloud-hosted services, then potential candidates for product and rental or commodity evolution stage. And then the decision whether to build or buy for supporting subdomain-related bounded context is a little bit more nuanced, because they don't provide competitive advantage. So they are non-differentiating, but specialized, right? Because they support our core domains offering. And the question is, do we have existing solutions available in the market that we can use? Or are they so specialized that it would go far beyond the design for use case of this off-the-shelf solution? And instead, then we can also decide whether we also want to build those supporting subdomain-related bounded contexts in-house. It depends really. It sparks a lot of conversations, and also brings in then a strategic mindset into everyone who's involved in this collaborative modeling workshop sessions.
Yeah, it's with supporting subdomains. I also like they say generic buy. Definitely, because it's most of the time standardized there, so that's a possibility. As you said, with supporting, that's not always possible. Then I look at tools like, are there things that will make it easier to build this? I also look at like future potential. Because some supporting, like we know that the core subdomains will become less important over time, because of the market and because your competitors will start doing similar things. And so core domains business value always goes down over time. And I also try to look at the supporting, like, does this have future potential? Like, is there, like, can we make a core out of this at some point if you want that? Because then again, you want to custom build that already starting, and not buy that off your shelf somehow. So that's a bit how I try to do that. I do think it's interesting. Do you think there, like, you have your core, supporting, and generic, and we have the Wardley mapping categories, which is, if I remember correctly, Genesis, custom, product, and commodity?
Yes.
Woohoo!
Very good. Very good.
Yeah. Do you see a link between those? Because I would assume that my instinct, not knowing Wardley mapping all that well, is that when we talk about the core, we're always in the Genesis and the custom there. And then if we go to supporting, we're somewhere custom product, and when we hit generic, we will always see that in commodity. Is that a good feeling?
Yeah, that is one of the heuristics. I guess so also that you can assign them to evolution stages, but you also have to keep in mind that competitive advantage is, according to Michael Porter, it is not only differentiation advantage, but also cost advantage. So, and I would usually had in my book, I had one of the 126 illustration is about illustrating like kind of like a slider. It's a heuristic, right? It's just like, but that your differentiation advantage is far higher in Genesis and custom build on the left side of your Wardley map than on the right side if your component is residing in these evolution stages. But the more competitors are offering the same solution, the differentiation advantage decreases, but also the more competitors are joining the market, it is also an indication that your component then evolves to the right spectrum to product and rental and commodity and utility. So, and there you have your cost advantage increases. So, so that you then try to that your competitive advantage has a higher level of cost advantage than maybe differentiation advantage. So even though, for example, cloud providers, right? So this is a good example in terms of their services that they provide are perceived as commodity components on the right spectrum of a Wardley map, but definitely so that is the components that we consume. So our Wardley map as a consumer looks different than their Wardley map from the cloud provider perspective. So there might be some areas that they don't outsource their data centers, or maybe or some are parts of their data centers or algorithms on top of it to their competitors just because it's now in commodity, right? So it is something that they, it does not always mean that if a component is located in product and rental or commodity, that is not custom built. So that is one of the tricks. That was one of the mental despair moments I had while writing the book. Because it is, it was like I tried to make an imperfect model perfect, or maybe a model that is not always fitting to make it fit, to squeeze it in. And that was something, okay, maybe I have to acknowledge that. And also I can then, so what I do sometimes is color coding the components. Which of those do we built in-house, and then could be a component on commodity and utility, which is color-coded with custom build. And then instead of like the evolution stage. So it really depends on the perspective. But usually as an initial rule of thumb, it's makes sense to align them to Genesis and custom build for core domain related bounded contexts, and then for supporting custom build and product and rental evolution stages, and for commodity could be also product and rental, but also for generic subdomain related bounded context, product and rental and commodity utility evolution stages. But there are also exceptions that we have to acknowledge.
Yeah, it's also I think a bit. It's for me at the beginning. It was very confusing when I sort of dug into Wardley mapping myself, because we have that thing of custom, and you're like, okay, custom means that it basically means that every competitor or every player on the market is sort of doing in their own version of all of this. But for us, when we say custom, most of the time we mean it's custom build. So when you go to product and commodity, it's like, but it's not custom built anymore because it's not in custom. But there's no rule saying that. Like ideally, that's how you would want it, but the world is not ideal.
Yeah, and I guess we have to differentiate between custom built evolution stage. That means like what are the properties and perspective we perceive as consumer of those components. If it's really, and differentiated from we are building in it how. So the development method underneath could be then not always reflected in the evolution stage. But it starts, it is, it helps you to address conversation, or to have the conversation around, okay, we have here a component that is in commodity and we custom build it. Is it why do we do this? So what is why do we do this? I guess a lot of like addressing why questions while creating this Wardley map in a group. And maybe there is a assumption like, oh, we did it wrong. Or for example, there was in one context, for example, they custom built their task management, or they were running in another context, they were running the infrastructure in the basement. So, and then I ask question, okay, that is how you differentiate yourself from your competitors? And then the answer is no. So yeah, okay, and why do you run it in the basement? So it was really, so at least to have, if we do this, maybe there are sometimes reasons why we are doing that, but that is then make it explicit, and to make also the decision why we do it, make it explicit. Not that it's just like we have done it all with the time before, so let's continue with that, but also challenging again our own assumptions.
Because I think that's it. Like most of the time, like they did the exercise. If they did the exercise, of course, supporting generic and custom build, and where is it? Like they did it a while back, 5 or 10 years, and that's sort of how it was back then. But they don't like sit down and reassess, saying, is this still the right way forward? I'm assuming at some point it made sense to have your servers in the basement. My first job, we also had like an in-house server thing where, our customers were on, but the cloud was not a not a thing yet when I started working, or at least not that popular yet. And nobody just ever challenged that, right? Like, should we still be doing this?
Yeah, I guess, this also, to like, when we made this decision, we are not re-evaluating the decision we have made in the past, oftentimes, right? So, and but if our environment has changed, I mean, we can leave it as is if we don't have if we have no competition, maybe then it's fine that we can live with it. And but the moment when we are living in a competitive environment, where and also like external forces impacting our landscape, that is also one of the climatic patterns that Simon Wardley describes, and that requires to reiterate your initial assumptions. There is no rule like what cadence you have to apply, but I guess whenever something, if one thing is that can help you with that, I would say, is also to understand the climatic patterns that are impacting our landscape. So, for example, that so that that the components will evolve along the evolution stages, across the evolution stages, due to supply and demand competition. So you know that your component will evolve over time, but you don't know exactly when, for example. Or that they are also inertia to change. So specifically when you have your past business model is very successful, let's look at Nokia, or Blockbuster, or Toys R Us, Sears, and so on. So they were very successful with their past business model, for example, Nokia. And they had an inertia to change to then fully transition to the smartphone era, even though they were one of the first. I guess they brought the first smartphone out in 2005. That was 2 years before Apple came out with their first iPhone in 2007. So, but they were still so reluctant to fully transition, and underestimated the importance of software running on smartphone devices, that they were overrun by, for example, Apple and other smartphone providers. So it is something, if you know this, if you are aware of some climatic patterns that act on the landscape, regardless of your context, that either can accelerate or de-accelerate the evolution of your components, then I guess it's easier to, we have to reiterate it in a regular cadence to see where we are standing right now and where we would like to move to.
Yeah. So the climate is it a bit like the market as well, or is
Could
that
be
more?
also the market, yeah. So the
Yeah.
climatic patterns, the climate itself describes, or climatic patterns describe external forces that impact our landscape we are operating and competing in. And could be the markets for example, when new competitors are entering the market, it will change our market, of course. And then also that we, for example, another climatic pattern is efficiency enables innovation. That means that when we, for example, commoditize a component or standardize a component that evolves then towards the right spectrum of a Wardley map towards commodity and utility, then other components can be built on top of it. So, and then enabling others to either that other components can co-evolve. For example, the death of movement was one of those, or then that new components can emerge on top of it as well. So they are then in genesis and custom built. So it is something market related, but yeah, it's your entire competitive environment you are operating in, and these are these are then context independent. So it happens in quite in every market.
Yeah, you can say that every market has its inherent things because of whatever domain that you are in, but then along the way you can detect patterns across all of these, and those are some of the things that he talks about in climate there.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
for example, I guess the market of plane factories like Airbus, Boeing, they have a totally different market than LLM solutions provider right now. So it is really like their cadence is 10 years, right? And that is totally different. The market is quite split among big players, or maybe a regulated market is also different. Highly regulated market, it has maybe some climatic patterns that come up or is more prevalent to those markets than in others. So but understanding what climatic patterns can impact your landscape is definitely generates a competitive advantage, because your competitors usually don't. So that that you can, for example, then you can also decide, understanding your business landscape you operate in, and also understanding the climatic patterns on top of it, and enabling yourself like this, where we come to doctrinal principles of Wardley mapping, like these are then universal principles that you can apply to your in order to enable you to respond to changes early and fast and often. I guess if that enables you then to bring you to make strategic decisions when we come, for example, to the last section of the strategy cycle, like leadership. Like, okay, where do we want to move to into the in the future?
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're almost at the end of the podcast, and I have 2 questions left for you. First, what are some of the things that are still like frustrating within like Wardley mapping or architecture for flow for you?
Yeah, frustrating, or in general, is that so we are usually we usually have to tackle complex business domains, right? It's not only restricted to architecture for flow in general, but what frustrates me is that we early hop on like solutions instead of before we have understood the problem. So to using like the new things, your new shiniest things that are now appearing in the market, without knowing does it help us to fulfill user needs effectively and efficiently or not. So it is really like just like now having all these like initiatives that focus more on the technology again, instead of does this technology support us in order that we can deliver our value to our customers faster and more in a sustainable manner, and also incorporate early feedback. I guess that is that we try to find that we tend to try to find a shortcut. And sometimes we can't have a shortcut, specifically in complex domains. So, and we always are so blinded with, oh, that is a great shortcut, let's use it. And then it's like, it becomes worse. We have to have, I guess, specifically right now with all the AI initiatives, it's really clear that we definitely have to have good processes in place before we can apply it, right? Otherwise, like the DORA AI-related report has revealed that it amplifies what's already there. Good processes become better, and bad processes become worse in an amplified way. So, and I guess even though that we say, we don't need patterns, practices, principles any longer, I guess that's not the case. It's the opposite, I would say. It's even though becoming more important to have an architecture that allows to be amenable to change from different perspectives. It's even more important than before, I would say.
All right. And so what does satisfying software means to you? When you feel that software is satisfying to you?
Yeah, I like to come back to build the right thing and build the thing right, effectiveness and efficiency. So first of all, satisfying software is something, it's not the goal like software, but it's the mean to the goal. So it is that we build software in order to help our users to accomplish their job effectively and efficiently. And I guess that is something that we have to build the right thing right, and not only focus on one thing only, or maybe not at all, like only focusing on technology, trying to figure out to have a solution for something we don't know what we want to solve. I guess that is something for me. Satisfying software is fulfilling user needs and helping users accomplishing and businesses accomplishing their job to make their life better, to make their work better, and deliver easier without bottlenecks along the way. Not only from external customer perspective, but also from internal customers' perspective. For example, teams able, autonomous, that they are able to deliver their work in a self-sufficient manner, for example, with self-service capabilities that maybe other, for example, platform teams or platform grouping from Team Topologies can then enable network of value streams resulting in a value chain, for example.
Thank you very much for joining me in the first episode of the second season.
Thank you for having me.
All right, everyone else, I will see you next week.